Hollywood's golden age was filled with dazzling stars shining under the spotlight. But in their shadows, dark secrets lurked. In 1922, renowned director William Desmond Taylor was found shot dead in his home. But this wasn't just any murder. This was Hollywood's first major scandal. Taylor was one of the most famous silent film directors of his time. His films were breaking box office records, and he was surrounded by Hollywood's elite. But there were as many unknowns about his life as there were successes, and those unknowns led to his death one fateful night. On the morning of February 2nd, 1922, Taylor's servant entered the house and found him lying motionless on the floor. At first, it was assumed he had died of a heart attack. There was no visible blood. However, when the police arrived, they uncovered a horrifying truth. Taylor had been shot in the back, and his death was far from natural. Suspects emerged quickly. The most suspicious figures were young actress Mary Miles Minter and her mother. Mary had been obsessively in love with Taylor, even writing him love letters, some of which mysteriously vanished as evidence. Her mother disapproved of their relationship, and according to some detectives, she had powerful connections to cover up the crime. But they weren't the only suspects. A few weeks before his death, Taylor had reported missing documents from his home. After his murder, investigators discovered that several important personal items and papers were gone. Was this merely a crime of passion, or was there a much larger conspiracy at play? As the investigation progressed, the case grew more complex. Hollywood's elite remained silent. While the media sensationalized the murder, the police oddly refrained from collecting key evidence. And the strangest part? The police chief at the time claimed scandalous documents about Taylor's private life had disappeared, but he never explained what they contained. And the final verdict? William Desmond Taylor's killer was never found. All suspects walked free, and the case was buried under a veil of mystery. But even today, this murder remains one of Hollywood's greatest unsolved crimes. He was one of Hollywood's most famous faces, but his end was far more mysterious than anyone expected. In 1959, George Reeves, best known for playing Superman, was found dead in his home, shot in the head. The police called it suicide, but the evidence left behind looked much more like murder. That night, George was spending time with a few friends at his house. Late at night, he went upstairs to his room. Shortly after, a single gunshot was heard. When his friends rushed upstairs, Reeves was dead. A gun lay next to his bed. But what seemed like an open and shut case quickly turned darker and more complicated. There were no fingerprints on the gun, not even George's. In fact, there were no fingerprints anywhere in the room. The door looked like it had been opened after the fact, and no proper evidence was ever collected. Neighbors also reported hearing shouting and arguments from the house shortly before the shot. So why did George die? Some say his career was falling apart and that he was depressed, but close friends claimed he was working on new projects and even planning to get married. Still, George's life was deeply entangled with Hollywood's dark secrets. One theory suggests that George was having an affair with Toni Mannix, the wife of powerful MGM executive Eddie Mannix. And Eddie Mannix, known for his ties to Hollywood's criminal underworld, would not tolerate such a relationship. Some believe George tried to end the affair, and that's when the dark forces of Hollywood may have stepped in. Another theory claims George knew too much about Hollywood's hidden, dangerous affairs, and maybe he was silenced. Was it suicide? Was it murder? The truth was never uncovered. George Reeves remained a mystery behind the Superman costume, a secret that Hollywood never wanted to reveal. What do you think? A hero's tragic end, or a dark crime buried deep within Hollywood? In 1947, a young and beautiful woman was found brutally murdered in Los Angeles, cut in half and horrifically tortured. The press called her the Black Dahlia, but her real name was Elizabeth Short. Who was behind this gruesome murder, and why has it never been solved? Elizabeth Short was only 22 years old. She had come to Los Angeles chasing her dream of becoming a Hollywood star, but instead of fame, a gruesome death awaited her. On the morning of January 15, 1947, a woman walking through an empty lot discovered body parts. Elizabeth Short's body had been severed in half. Her face was slashed from ear to ear. her mouth cut wide open. She had been horribly tortured. When police arrived, they were shocked by the scene. But what was even more surprising, there was no blood at the crime scene. It was clear that her body had been moved there after her death. As the investigation began, Elizabeth's life was scrutinized. Bars, hotels, old lovers. But none of the clues led anywhere. Some believed the killer was a powerful figure from Hollywood, perhaps why the case was never solved. Others thought it was a secret admirer or obsessed lover. One of the most chilling theories suggested the murder was ritualistic. Because her body had been cut with surgical precision, some detectives believed a doctor or pathologist was involved. But despite all these clues, the killer was never found. To this day, the Black Dahlia murder remains one of America's most terrifying and mysterious crimes. And that bloody scene still symbolizes the dark side of Hollywood. If you want to see more stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment.